From Nantwich to Pocklington, Burnley to Brampton, and where you're watching BBC One tonight, Panorama investigates Trump. The sequel?
My fellow citizens, America's comeback starts right now.
Donald Trump is back and is plotting a return to the White House.
I am your warrior, I am your justice, and for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution.
I'm Justin Webb.
And I'm Marianna Spring. Together, we interrogate US politics on our podcast, Americast.
That conversation dominated once again by one man, Donald Trump.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
If Donald Trump is convicted, what happens to this country?
I think it will be in serious trouble. It'll be a constitutional crisis.
We're in America as it heads for an extraordinary rematch between two of the oldest presidential candidates in history. The stakes couldn't be higher.
As we begin this election year, democracy is on the ballot. Your freedom is on the ballot.
Republican presidential candidates face off in Iowa, hoping to be the one to take on President Biden.
Donald Trump has a commanding lead in the polls right now. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis appear to...
This dangerous political year begins here in Iowa amid weather-induced mayhem.
As an Arctic blast grips big parts of the country.
It is below minus 20 degrees here at the moment.
It's Trump's first comeback test with real voters. He must win the support of Republican Party members in state-by-state battles to be their nominee for president.
There are dozens of trucks stranded, broken, and spun off on these roads at the moment. It's an extraordinary sight to see, particularly as it's all happening at the beginning of the presidential election process.
With the weather worsening, Trump's decided to stay out of the fray until the last minute.
Hello, Iowa, this is your favorite president. I'll get there sometime around Saturday night or something. One way or the other, I'm getting there.
With Trump absent and Marianna struggling to get here, it's down to me to find warmth and political action. The only contender out braving the conditions is Nikki Haley. Trump appointed her ambassador to the UN during his first presidency. Now she's running against him, trying to convince Republicans that he's yesterday's man.
We're looking for hardcore Nikki Haley fans. Aha, we found them. What is it about her that you like?
I have no interest in voting for somebody in their 70s. I think this is time for a new generation that is qualified to take over the job, and not just 4 but 8 more years. So I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, I want to see some new fresh blood, fresh ideas, fresh energy. Someone who I feel is up to the job.
Give a warm Iowa welcome to Ambassador Nikki Haley.
I think President Trump was the right president at the right time. I agree with a lot of his policies. But rightly or wrongly, chaos follows him. You know I'm right. Chaos follows him. And we can't have a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos.
This is what Iowa's all about. There's no rope line, there's no distance actually between the candidate and the people. You can press forward if you want to talk to Nikki Haley, and you can ask her anything you like. Ambassador from the BBC. Hey, are you still confident?
Or maybe not. Her message is clear, and you'll hear it again and again from those out to stop Trump. He means chaos, and for some, it's hitting home.
He brings so much chaos, and I'm afraid we're going to start turning on each other because of him. I'm afraid that we're going to go down a really scary path because of him.
She did hit the nail on the head that yes, there's a lot of chaos that does follow Donald Trump. I like his policies.
I don't think it's going to make a difference to those that support Trump. I think those that support Trump are going to support Trump no matter what he does.
That's what you hear, the length and breadth of Iowa. Many Trump supporters are sticking with their man. Marianna.
Hello.
Welcome to Iowa. I've been before, but not for a long time. You've never been.
I've never been. When were you last here?
2008, very, very different circumstances. It was the Obama year, and it was close. This time with Trump, Trump's already so far ahead. It just feels, in so many ways, so different.
So what have you been up to since you've been here?
Driving carefully and going to a Nikki Haley event. She says in one poll she is 17 percentage points ahead of Joe Biden in a face-to-face matchup. 17%. I mean, that's a blowout victory. And Donald Trump isn't, which is another kind of complication of the whole thing and the decision that Republicans have had to make. To add to all the other weirdnesses this time around is that, of course, you've got one candidate, Donald Trump, who is facing staggering legal jeopardy.
He's facing these 91 felony charges. I can't really get my head around the fact that someone who could be elected president could also then be in prison.
Nothing like that has ever happened before.
Particularly when you look at social media and the very committed pro-Trump groups. No matter what happens to him, it folds into this story about it's been rigged, he's being wronged, it's all part of the plot. It helps to create this image of him as the person who's sort of sticking it to the man. His
own supporters are absolutely determined and absolutely able to deliver him to the party, and the party's got no real choice in it. That's left the old-school Republican influencers a good deal less relevant this time round. We're a few miles out of Des Moines now, and we're going to church to see one of Iowa's top religious leaders. Known as a kingmaker in Iowa's socially conservative politics, Bob Vander Plaats has picked the last 3 Republican winners of this contest. This time round, he's not backing Trump. He doesn't think he can win a rematch with Biden.
If Trump wins the nomination, it is a high hurdle for him to win that general election.
What on earth has happened with this Republican primary? It was long ago, Trump seemed out.
When Trump left office, and right on the heels of January 6th, I think a lot of people thought, he's done. This is over. This is going to be his legacy. But then being Donald Trump, he's going to stage a comeback.
Where is Trump on abortion, do you think? Which is so important to so many of the people who think like you. Where is he?
I believe he's pro-choice. When he gets asked, will you be a champion for all life, in particular the life of the unborn, he says, hey, we need to win elections. Okay, that's not a champion for life, that's a champion for you.
But most Republican voters disagree with him. They're fired up by Trump's promises to crack down on immigration and drug smuggling. But there's Trump royalty in the House. Carrie Lake, the Arizona politician, election denier, huge Trump supporter, possible vice president under President Trump.
You look at what Joe Biden has done, which has practically destroyed our country, and you look at what President Trump did, which was put America first and build our country up. And so I think Americans from all walks of life are listening.
How wild a ride is it going to be?
It's going to be like the greatest ride ever, because we're going to get back to having a secure border, secure states. We're going to take on the cartels and stop the flow of deadly fentanyl.
Is he going to arrest his opponents and all that stuff?
I think he's going to root out the corruption that has taken over our government and restore our government to we the people. Now, you're from Great Britain. I don't expect you to understand our history, but we spilled blood to have this country. We spilled blood to free ourselves from the globalist named King George. And so we got a lot on the line.
Temperatures in the state plummeting to as low as -30. Turnout could be a factor.
The weather's so bad it could stop people voting. Trump, who's just arrived in Iowa, is making light of it.
You got to do it big, you got to get out. You can't sit home. Even if you vote and then pass away, it's worth it, remember?
Tonight's vote is the first real test of Trump's resurgence.
If you want to make America proud again, if you want to make America great again, please make Donald Trump the Republican nominee for president, and then president of the United States.
There's no denying that he's running a slick campaign this time around. He's mobilised an army of devoted volunteers to help get his supporters to the polls, all wearing the same distinctive hat.
Would you start by telling me a bit about your cap?
Every person that is a Trump caucus captain received this unique cap. And I happen to get his autograph on mine.
Oh, wow. Why have you decided to go for Trump?
I'm not crazy about some of the mean tweets he had. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it's like one of those things like when your kids mess up, you know. But there's nobody that can deny that the United States was better off when he was our president.
There's plenty who may deny it, but that feeling is at the heart of Trump's enduring appeal.
It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 16th of January.
The main news this morning, Donald Trump has won a decisive victory in the Iowa caucus. The first vote.
It's a very special night, and this is the first because the big night is going to be in November when we take back our country, and truly, we do make our country great again.
Trump wins by a landslide with more than 50% of the vote. One-time rival Ron DeSantis drops out. Nikki Haley gets just 19% but stays in the race. Trump already seems destined to win the Republican nomination.
Thank you very much.
It doesn't look like his party will stop Donald Trump, but his legal difficulties still might.
Donald Trump is back in court today.
He's already lost 2 costly civil cases.
Donald Trump and a staggering fine. A judge in New York fining Trump $355 million in his civil fraud case.
He's also facing 4 criminal cases. He's accused of using campaign funds to pay off an adult film star. Accused of lying about keeping top-secret documents at his Mar-a-Lago home. And 2 other cases, one in Washington, D.C. and one in Georgia, accusing him of conspiring to overturn the last election in the run-up to the Capitol riots.
And we fight. We fight like hell.
We have a breach of the Capitol! Breach of the Capitol!
A congressional investigation into the attack on the 6th of January 2021 has already found that Trump had incited violence that day.
They were peaceful people. The love in the air, I've never seen anything like it.
The entire nation watched in horror. The whole world watched in disbelief. It was among the worst derelictions of duty by a president in American history.
In addition to the criminal cases, one pressure group has convinced a court in Colorado to bar Trump from running in their state.
This is about preventing any future president and any future office holder from engaging in insurrection and holding office again.
You may well have the constitutional arguments on your side, but my goodness, the politics are explosive if you stop him running this year.
Well, so the last time Donald Trump was on a ballot in a free and fair election, he lost, refused to accept the results, and incited an insurrection. So the idea that his supporters will be disappointed or angry or violent is a likelihood whether he wins or loses, whether he's on the ballot or not.
Trump appealed the Colorado ban to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. Judges have just ruled that he should be on the ballot.
Trump's legal difficulties would have sunk most candidates, but not him.
Because in the end, they're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am, I'm standing in their way, and I always will be.
There are people all over this country, in red counties, blue counties, swing states, non-swing states, who have been fed a toxic diet of lies for well over 3 years now. They've been told that 1 + 1 = green, and they believe it.
Donald Trump did nothing wrong.
David Becker wrote the book on what's been called Trump's big lie.
There is no precedent in American history for a former president, a leading presidential candidate, to have engaged in behavior that attacked a legitimate election that was verified over and over and over and over again.
Trump is trying to turn his legal challenges to his advantage.
Somebody said the fundraising is through the roof.
When he shows up at a court appearance, he turns it into a campaign event. He is trying to consolidate support from his supporters on the basis of the fact that he is a martyr.
I mean, the only good thing about it is it's driven my poll numbers way up. Can you believe it?
Fighting these court cases isn't cheap. In the past year, Trump has spent $55 million of supporters' money on his legal bills. Trump being Trump, he's found his own way of topping up his defense fund. Within days of being arrested last year, he'd made more than $9 million selling his mugshot.
If he is convicted of any of these charges, can he still be president?
The answer is legally yes. There is nothing that suggests he can't be.
One man due to stand trial alongside Trump is John Eastman. Donald Trump is in legal jeopardy. You're in legal jeopardy. Tell us about it.
And I'm indicted co-conspirator number 3.
John is one of the most brilliant lawyers in the country, and he looked at this and he said, what an absolute disgrace that this could be happening to our Constitution.
On January the 6th, John Eastman told the crowd that the election result was tainted and he had evidence of widespread voter fraud.
We know there was fraud, traditional fraud that occurred. We know that dead people voted.
And it was found, wasn't it, in Georgia, when they looked into your allegations, that actually the overwhelming majority of the people who you said were dead and voted had actually died after the election, and indeed had voted in person. It's just made up.
Well, it's not made up, right? Now, yes, in Georgia, they found, well, most of the people had actually cast a vote before they died and then voted. But in Michigan, over 1,500 people were confirmed to have had votes cast on their behalf long after they died.
That's not true. After an audit, Michigan's Secretary of State declared the result was fair, secure, and accurate. Trump and his supporters filed 60 separate legal cases across the country, including in Michigan, challenging the election result. No court has backed his claims. Now he's charged, alongside Eastman and 17 others, with being part of a criminal conspiracy to overturn the result.
The president's claim is that these are frivolous criminal cases brought against him in order to disrupt the election or interfere with the election.
If it goes against you, though, you're going to jail.
There's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we get to that point.
If Donald Trump is successfully prosecuted and convicted, what happens to this country?
Well, I think it will be in serious trouble. It'll be a constitutional crisis. And what we're, in the view of millions of Americans, is a federal government that has gotten out of control, that has become unresponsive to the will of the people.
This vicious persecution is a travesty of justice.
We've got to be careful here. Their trial is due to take place later this year, but Trump is doing everything he can to delay all the criminal cases until after the election.
He's facing these felony charges, which are a really big deal, and he could spend, what, over 700 years in prison?
Very unlikely that he spends all 700 years in prison, given his age. But I mean, I think you can say now the court cases have rebounded against those who have brought them. Now, they weren't ordered from the White House. That's the Trump claim, and it's flat untrue. But the effect of those cases up to now has been to bolster him, and that is just a fact.
One thing that worries me quite a lot thinking about the next election is the normalisation of sort of quite violent and hateful rhetoric. We're sitting here not very far from where those Capitol riots happened on January the 6th, in part inspired by disinformation and false narratives on social media and offline from the mouths of politicians. Would that happen again?
It just might. Listen to this. Thousands of Democrat voters received this recorded message, believing it to be Joe Biden.
We know the value of voting Democratic when our votes count.
It sounds like they were being encouraged not to vote for him as the Democrats' candidate for president.
It's important that you save your vote.
Turns out it isn't real. It's been generated by artificial intelligence and reinforces how disinformation could be a threat in the upcoming election.
That call was indeed fake and not recorded by the president. I can confirm that.
In past elections, disinformation campaigns targeting US voters have been connected to hostile foreign powers. The fake Biden call was created in New Orleans.
What Russia did in 2016 was to teach everybody else how to create and disseminate false information. We're now in a situation where some of the greatest dangers may not be coming from the Russians and the Chinese, but from our fellow Americans.
AI images of Trump and Biden are everywhere online, intended to paint candidates in a particular light. But I've also found images targeting specific groups, like black voters.
Yeah, they call us a cult. Well, it's the best cult ever.
Mark Kay presents a conservative radio show in Florida and has more than 1 million followers on social media. He posted a story about black support for Trump and attached this fabricated image created using AI.
I'm not a photojournalist. I'm not out there taking pictures of what's really happening. I'm a storyteller. I'm not claiming it is accurate. I'm not saying, hey, look, Donald Trump was at this party with all of these African-American voters. Look how much they love him.
It does give that impression, though. It does give that impression. If you didn't know it wasn't real, you'd think he's at this party and he's met all these people who support him, because it's quite convincing.
If anybody's voting one way or another because of one photo they see on a Facebook page, that's a problem with that person, not with the post itself.
This scenario never happened. Would you rather not just share a real image of Trump with black voters?
It's more of an illustration. I'll be honest with you, disinformation from our news organizations and our political candidates is my major concern.
Disinformation and fake AI images could make a difference in hotly contested states like Georgia.
It's no longer conspiracy theory that there were documented attempts to target disinformation to black communities, again, especially younger black voters.
Most black Americans have only had the vote since 1965. Cliff Albright runs an organisation that encourages them to exercise that right.
So I wanted to show you something that popped up on my social media feed a couple of weeks ago. I mean, this got 1.3 million views according to X's own data, AI generated. And there were loads of people commenting underneath who essentially believed it.
My first reaction is that did not happen. I can't really imagine a situation where that happens, but it's scary that it can be created. It's scary that somebody can push it out. But the part that scares us the most is when somebody in our community gets it, maybe an influencer, right? Maybe a rapper. And then from there, it's viral and it just takes on a life and a truth of its own.
When Trump lost the state of Georgia by a small margin in 2020, it became the focal point of his unsupported claims the election was stolen.
They defrauded us out of a win in Georgia, and we're not going to forget it.
It's one of a handful of swing states he'll have to win this time.
How important is the black vote?
The black vote is critical. It's going to be critical in this election coming up. We've got to have lots of conversations with voters to get folks to be motivated, to get folks to be energized, and to overcome a lot of bad information, disinformation that they'll likely be receiving from other sources.
In 2020, Joe Biden got 92% of the black vote nationwide. In recent weeks, both he and Trump have been trying to woo black voters, but in very different ways.
You're the reason Donald Trump is a defeated former president. You're the reason Donald Trump is a loser. And you're the reason we're going to win and beat him again.
Then I got indicted a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. And a lot of people said that that's why the black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against. The black people are so much on my side now because they see what's happening to me happens to them.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, all right.
Douglas, who's a cab driver here in Atlanta, is disillusioned about both the candidates.
Trump and Biden are dinosaurs. It's an interesting election, just like the last one was, with all the controversy surrounding it. Really, I'm probably just going to sit back on the couch and watch it. You know, have me a nice glass of wine or something like that. The Democratic Party only comes around to pander to the black vote only when re-election comes up. Once they get reelected, they forget about us for the next 2 to 4 years.
A recent poll suggests 1 in 5 black voters say they'll back a Republican this year. That's almost twice as many as past elections.
I don't see anyone beating Donald Trump. I think a majority of Americans want things to go back to the way they were under Trump. Gas wasn't this high. The economy was better. I think I made the most money I ever made.
The US economy is growing fast and record numbers of jobs have been created. But some voters don't feel better off because they've also been through a cost of living crisis.
If I had to lean my support towards either one, which I don't want to, in my opinion, the lesser of the two evils is Donald Trump. But I don't believe in voting for the lesser of two evils, because at the end of the day, you're still voting for evil.
America looks set for a rematch between 81-year-old Joe Biden and 77-year-old Donald Trump. Their age and capacity to do the job are becoming a key issue.
I'm competing with a man who can't put two sentences together, who doesn't know what he's doing.
How do you address that concern going forward as you come up to the 2024 election?
Well, a couple things. Number one, you got to take a look at the other guy. He's about as old as I am, but he can't remember his wife's name.
Yeah.
And number two, it's about how old your ideas are.
Trump's Republican rival, Nikki Haley, has lost every head-to-head contest with him bar one. But she's stayed in the race.
Are we really in this country going to have two 80-year-olds running for president? It is a fact that when you are their age, you have mental decline. I don't care who you are.
There's a long way to go in the race to the White House. It's going to be bitter and divisive, with both Donald Trump and Joe Biden facing serious questions in different ways about their fitness to serve.
Okay, predictions. What's going to happen before the election?
Here's my outside prediction. I think there's a real possibility that neither of these men will be their party's candidate. Reason being, well, the obvious ones, decline, physical, mental decline, that both of them, according to their enemies, show signs of having, but also just the huge political pressures that there are on them. So my prediction, and I'm sticking to it at least for the time being, neither of the above.
I'm going to predict it will be both of the above, and that both Trump and Biden will be facing off again this time around for 2024.
What we're seeing played out is a national trauma, and many Americans would say a national disaster. They do not want it to be like this. They don't want Donald Trump, they don't want Joe Biden either. I think most Americans just see this election as something that they never wanted to happen in their lifetimes.
In 8 months' time, America will pick its next president.
You can follow the race every step of the way with us on Americast.
There's a new podcast called Trumped on Sounds, the story of his controversial golf resort in Aberdeenshire. And Amal Rajan talks everything from Watergate to Trump with Titans Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. Press red for interviews on iPlayer.